Such a great group on here. My name is Jason Vogel. I'm a professor in civil engineering and environmental science at the University of Oklahoma and the director of the Great Plains Stormwater Center of Excellence. The Great Plains Stormwater Center of Excellence is a joint venture between Oklahoma State University, Pawnee Nation College, Langston University, Kansas State University, and the University of Oklahoma, funded by the EPA. Started up this summer. We've been laying the groundwork on everything. And one of the things that we are going to be doing is putting on a monthly webinar series relevant to stormwater in the Great Plains. Kind of the layout of these webinars is that we'll have kind of rotating of how we do them. First off, we have innovative site design, some from somewhere within the Great Plains, which we're going to be starting with today. We also have one that's more of a national perspective on some type of topic that the speaker may be from the Great Plains or from outside of the Great Plains. Once every 3 months, we will have a Center of Excellence open house where the webinar will kind of be breakout rooms, and we'll talk about some of the projects we have going on and get direct stakeholder feedback on some of the things that we're doing, and each one of those will be different. And then we'll cycle through that every 3 months. We're always happy to get suggestions for future webinars. If you guys have something innovative or something that you think that the broader stormwater community in the Great Plains would like to do, then we'd be happy to do that. Jake McDoulet is our project manager. He'll be talking here in just a second, but if you go to our website, gpstormwater.org, you can find out more about us and get our contact information so you can reach out to Jake. So with that, I'll turn the floor over to Jake.
Hey, everybody. I'm Jake McDoulet, project manager for the Stormwater Center. Thank you, everybody, for coming and joining us. I'm excited to have this opportunity for us to share experience and learn from each other, from other stormwater professionals in the Great Plains. Our guest speaker today is our first guest speaker of our webinar series, Kate Barnes. She's a water resources engineer from HR Green, Inc. She has a focus on the design and implementation of stormwater BMPs and stormwater design and modeling. And today we're going to hear from her about one of the innovative stormwater management techniques in Iowa. She also has experience in stream stabilization projects, working in permitting, hydrologic and hydraulic modeling, and storm sewer design. And so we're excited to hear more from her, and I think she has a space in her talk to talk about her own educational experience. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Kate Barnes.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. Can everyone see the presentation? Okay. I'm going to talk a little bit about a project that I worked on for the city of Cedar Rapids. It's called the E Avenue Oxbow Wetland Creation and Flood Reduction Basin. A little bit about myself, just adding on to what Jake said. I am originally from Cedar Rapids. I attended Iowa State University, graduated in 2014, then went on to Oklahoma State University, where I graduated in 2016 and also met Jason. And I've been working in the civil engineering consulting area for about 10 years, but in the Des Moines area instead of where I'm originally from, which is Cedar Rapids, and where this project took place. I work for HR Green, which is a nationwide firm for civil engineering. We offer all different types of services, from broadband to traditional transportation, water, and even some environmental construction services. We have about 750 employees, And what I like about our firm is we have a very local feel. We work on local projects, but we have national experts that we can call on for any sort of project that we have. This project that I'm going to talk about today is in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. So that's eastern Iowa. It's our second largest city in the state, and it has about 137,000 people. I want to talk about how we got to this project. So this project is currently under construction. It's almost done, but I want to go back a little bit and talk about how we got here and why this project even exists. So in 2008, the city of Cedar Rapids experienced a record flood event with the river cresting at 31 feet in June. This was due to a really wet spring and wet soil and a lot of runoff across Iowa. And it ended up flooding the entire downtown area of Cedar Rapids. This island right here is the Cedar Rapids City Hall, and there was about 10 square miles of flooding, 1,300 blocks, and thousands of homes and businesses that were inundated. It displaced about anywhere from 10,000 to 18,000 residents and was declared a major federal disaster and estimated $10 billion in damages. At the time, that was one of the nation's largest events damage-wise. This is a picture of downtown Cedar Rapids. It was completely flooded. But the city decided to move quickly, and they put together a long-term flood management strategy within just 5 months of this event happening. Their strategy included structural flood control measures, so levees, flood walls, pump stations, and detention basins, but also converting flood-prone properties to greenways, wetlands, and open space. And then the city also developed the Stormwater Master Plan because of these floods. So this Stormwater Master Plan was actually done by a different firm called HDR, and they modeled the entire city of Cedar Rapids hydraulically with a 1D, 2D model. This is a screen grab of the modeling extents, but what the Stormwater Master Plan set out to do was reflect the city's vision for the future as presented in a document called Envision CR, develop a hydraulic model that served as a platform to better define needs and consider cost-effective solution, reflect the city staff's effort to maintain and preserve the existing stormwater system through asset management, and then prioritize and recommend projects for capital improvement plans. Also, the study aimed to identify financial needs and potential funding to close the gap between revenue needs, consider potential policy solutions to address fundamental issues that contribute to current flooding problems, and establish the foundation for annual updates to expand and improve upon the initial plan. So they really did a lot of work modeling the whole city and determining areas where upgrades were needed and prioritizing those upgrades based on available funding. So this image right here is actually the watershed where the project that we're going to talk about today is. It's right here. And so it's on the west side of the Cedar River. And yeah. Another part of what came of these floods was a flood control system. So the city is still actively designing and constructing their flood control system. The green are areas of the levee that are complete. The red is areas where active construction is taking place, and the blue are future construction areas. You'll notice that what's on the top of this page, which is actually the east side of the river, is more complete than the west side of the river. And that's because this is the downtown area of Cedar Rapids, and this side of the river received federal funding. So they needed to complete that work quicker than the west side, but the city does plan to do both sides of the river. They just needed to complete the east side first. So now I'll talk a little bit about where the project is located. This is along an area called the Vinton Ditch. Along with the 2008 floods, record 2014 flood events happened where along the Vinton Ditch, and that really established a need to kind of get this project kicked off. So the city put together plans for a basin along E Avenue, and they called out their city stormwater master plan. And there was a lot of discussion about traditional versus, we call it here in Iowa, the unified sizing criteria, stormwater detention. And the E Avenue basin approach was they wanted to implement both water quality and quantity into the project. So here's the Vinton Ditch, what it looks like. Not the prettiest of locations. It runs all the way across that watershed that we looked at earlier, all the way to the Cedar River. And so eventually this area will be protected by a levee. So there will need to be a pump station for flood events to get this water out from the drainage area to the Cedar River. So this watershed in particular looked at ways of reducing flows that go to this pump station so that interior drainage could also get out to the river. Here is the 2014 event that also happened. We're right here. So not only did we just have the 2008 floods, but we also had the 2014 floods, and area around the project, there was significant flooding in the neighborhood. I'm going to go through some pictures from the city. There was a local grocery mart, Hy-Vee, that got flooding in the store. And so our project site is along the Vinton Ditch, and what we wanted to do was expand upon the idea of just traditional detention to help reduce some of those flows. So these are some pictures of the existing basin. You'll see just essentially a channel. It was built in the early 1990s, and it serves the upstream watershed, and it also somewhat serves as a park to local residents. There's not really anything but an open grass area and a sidewalk surrounding the area, so it's not like a traditional park. It was just a park space. The watershed is about half of that area that I showed previously from the Stormwater Management Plan. It's also located in a FEMA flood zone and floodway. So in the Stormwater Management Plan, what was really trying to be highlighted was where are places in the watershed that we can just put detention and try to reduce all flows going to the Cedar River, because really what we want to do is decrease the size of the pumps that are needed for any sort of interior drainage during flood stage. So essentially they called out the area, hey, let's put a basin on along E Avenue, and we'll use that to decrease flows. So when we talk about different types of detention, traditionally we're looking at just the 100-year event, but Iowa recently, within the past 10 years, adopted what they call the unified sizing criteria. So looking at basically a wide range of storms, and we want to treat all of those storms because we get different benefits from treating the different storms. So the smallest of the storms we call the recharge value or recharge storm. This would be rain events that are small that we want to infiltrate everything back into the ground. Our water quality event, I'm not sure how this event works for all the states in the Great Plains, but at least for Iowa, we try to treat the 1.25-inch storm, and this captures about 90% of all storms that happen in Iowa. And our next largest storm in the unified sizing criteria is our channel protection storm. So this is looking at about the 1-year storm and just making sure that those annual flows that we see aren't causing issues for channels. And if we can kind of hold back some of that water, our hope is that we won't have as much erosion happening in creeks. And then we have our overbank flood protection and extreme flood protection. So those would be treating anywhere from the 25 to 100-year storm and more of the traditional detention methods. So if we look at traditional versus the updated stormwater detention requirements, this is a screen grab of Iowa from an area that was developed prior to the 1980s where there were no detention requirements. And then if you look at more current developed areas, we have a lot more detention, but all of these detention areas are sized only for the 100-year storm and reducing that to, it's called the pre-developed 5-year event. So basically we tried to reduce our 100-year proposed flows down to the pre-development 5-year. And beyond that, the unified sizing criteria, which we don't have really any screen grabs of recently developed areas, would be detaining even more than just that 100-year event. So this illustrates kind of what the outfall structure for the unified sizing criteria might look like. We have a multi-stage outlet structure that prevents, so it basically has a treatment level and then the water quality, channel protection, overbank, and extreme flood events have different outlets that they're sized appropriately so the different rainfall events can travel through the outlet structure. And how this applies to the Vinton Ditch. So the area where our project is located is right here in the middle of the watershed. And when the Stormwater Management Plan was developed, it was like, let's just try to do traditional detention and hold back as much water as we can to prevent water from inundating during flood events. So this image right here is what the current system would look like if there was an event where pumping would happen. And so all of this area is inundated. What we looked at is, could we update this design to a different design that incorporated treating some of those lower storms, but also still reducing peak flows? So we created a hydraulic model of our own to show if we modified the design from a traditional detention to one that incorporated water quality features, could we still get peak flow reductions that were similar or more than what was outlined in the Stormwater Master Plan? And so here's a quick chart of the flows that we were able to obtain with our modeling. And so when we go into the design of the site, we were looking at local flood mitigation. We want to have less of an impact on the neighborhood. We also want to assist with the city's flood control system and make necessary civil engineering improvements to the water main and sanitary sewer while we were in the area, and then also improve the transportation in the area and provide the ecological uplift and water quality uplift, as well as provide some connection to local trails. So again, we have our watershed contributing to where our detention basin is, that then goes to the pump station and out to the Cedar River. This was the original design for the basin, just purely based on the Stormwater Management Plan. We're going to do some grading. We're going to try to open up the area and provide as much detention as we can. This is the final design of what our site looked like. We ended up incorporating 5 oxbow wetlands into the detention basin. So our original footprint was in this area, but we created several low spots for detention of those lower storm events, and also pocket wetlands that will remain beyond just the storm event. Our site also included connection to this proposed future Cherokee Trail and additional sidewalk around the whole park area, as well as hammerhead turnarounds to make the neighborhood safer for emergency management, and modifications to the trail bridge weir so we could control some of the flows leaving the site. So this is the existing weir that we have on site, and this was a lot of our modeling was determining how could we model and change this weir to maximize some of the potential for detention on site. We also had improvements to the sanitary sewer system running through the site, as well as improvements to the water main. That's what I discussed previously. We put in a trail. And then this image really demonstrates how we modified the weir. So our existing weir was a low weir that wasn't quite maximizing storage on site. But what we also didn't want to do was flood people upstream. So we really needed to incorporate our basin grading with our new weir design and our hydraulic modeling to make sure that we could detain flows per the Stormwater Management Plan. And what we ended up coming up with was a wider weir with a little bit higher of a weir detention storage volume. So the oxbows themselves really cut into the existing grade and provide a lot of traditional storage, but with these oxbow flow paths that provide wetland habitat. We used a mix of native wetland plants from Iowa so that we could have really good ecological uplift on the site and have some of the water infiltrate back into the site. These are some photos of the different types of wetland plants that we used. And our planting plan. So within the oxbows themselves, we use the wetland mix, which we've had success with. Iowa sets out different seed mixes that are successful through our urban drainage specifications. And then within the detention area that would just be seasonally wet, shouldn't stay wet all the time, we put a native grass mix. And then along the border of the project itself, we put just regular grass. We call it type 1 seed mix. And this was actually our funding agency required us to put a border of regular grass around the site because there was a fear of any future fires. They wanted basically a border to protect the neighborhood from any potential grass fires, which I thought was really interesting because we don't get a lot of grass fires in Iowa. The project itself received some funding from the FEMA disaster funding, as well as EIDL's Water Quality Initiative funding. This is a program in Iowa that you can apply for funding up to $150,000 with a 50% match. And then also it was funded by the city. We think the project was a good project for the neighborhood because it provided local flood mitigation, but it also reduced the size of the pump station needed as part of the Cedar River flood control system. So because we were able to lower some of those flows for the lower storms that pump is designed for, we could decrease the size of the pump needed and save the city quite a bit of money downstream, while also providing that ecological uplift. So the original design for the basin would have reduced those flows at the flood control system, but it wouldn't have provided any of the water quality or native features that our current design had. So we are seeing water quality improvement, increased pedestrian amenities. Iowa has really good trail networks. You can bike almost across the whole state. We are very interconnected from city to city with our trails. So we were able to connect 2 major trail systems with this project and provide natural habitat. The local neighborhood was really excited about the project because they were going to have a more pretty scenic area. They were already walking in the grassed area, so now they were going to have a trail that they could walk around the park, and also being able to, while we're in the area, improve the water main and sanitary system and improve the safety of the neighborhood with the hammerhead turnarounds for residents and fire trucks. That was seen as a benefit to the project as well. That did not take as long as I thought it would take, but I am open to any questions that anyone has about the project, any further details, any questions, I guess, in general.
All right, thank you so much, Kate. Feel free to put your question in the chat. Jake, can people ask their questions in person as well?
Yep, I've just allowed everybody to unmute themselves.
Okay, maybe I'll ask a question to get the ball rolling. Can you talk a little bit about the maintenance on this? Who does it? What kind of things do you do? Was there any special training for city folks that are doing the maintenance? Those sort of things.
Yep. So I guess the city of Cedar Rapids has implemented quite a few native projects across town that use the native plantings. It's becoming more and more common across the state. So their city staff are well equipped to maintain these areas, but I believe the first year post construction is on the contractor. So they'll seed the area and then they'll have a year warranty period where they'll reseed any areas that need to be reseeded.
I have a question following up on the maintenance question, and it sounds like it hasn't been in that long, so I don't know if you've run into this, but one of the things we run into is when we do more native plantings, it tends to look messier and we're not mowing things and sort of maintaining in a traditional way. And so we end up getting a lot of complaints from residents who think that nobody's maintaining it, even though that's sort of its natural form for those plants. Have you had any issues with that? And if so, how has that been managed?
Yeah, so in Iowa, I think we originally had that when the native projects were first starting. There was a lot of complaints like, oh, it doesn't look very good, but we have the Iowa Stormwater Education Partnership Program that put in a lot of work to creating signage for different projects around town. And this project actually has a sign associated with it that explains the native plants but also we've really promoted with residents that it's really not going to look good for 1 to 3 years until the natives start to get established. And we do always try to include seed mixes that have flowering plants as well, because people can really get behind more of a flowering plant look than just the grasses that can tend to look like weeds. But the city itself has done a lot of projects like these around town with the native plants, so people are used to it and kind of excited when it's announced that something is coming to their neighborhood because they've seen successful projects in the past.
Thanks, Kate. We're getting some good questions rolling in here, so I'm just going to start reading them off. Maybe we can go back and forth between verbal and written ones if we have people who want to ask their questions as well. So Jace Proctor is asking, I may have missed it, but did these additional features improve flood storage from what the previous designs were?
Our design slightly improved the flood storage, yes. What we basically wanted to focus on, our original project goal was just the traditional stormwater detention, was set reductions from the stormwater management plan for the city. So what we wanted to do was see, can we still meet those flow reductions with this oxbow wetland feature added to the site? And we were able to meet the original and was just slightly reduced for all of the storms.
I'll ask a follow-up question on that. What was the difference in cost between a traditional and this?
So we were able to obtain funding because we incorporated some of these features, so we didn't have additional costs.
All right. Art is asking, how involved was public outreach as part of this project?
Oh gosh. I don't know if I have a good answer for that because the city handles all of the public outreach, not sometimes cities will have the consultant help out with that. But for this particular project, the city handled all of the public outreach. What I heard from them was that the residents were really excited about this project, especially some of the non-water quality features like the trail, because they were already walking kind of in that open grass area to get out and get exercise. They were excited to have a trail loop to use.
Very good. And anybody want to ask a question verbally? Troy? Or maybe you have a follow-up.
Yep. No, this is Troy. Hey, Kate, great presentation. I really enjoyed it. I'm with the University of Iowa at the hydraulics lab, and we were involved in doing the physical modeling of the 12th Avenue and the Bowling Street pump stations as part of this project. So great to learn more about the project. I was curious, my question is, I really like the idea of the oxbows, and you'd mentioned that including these in the project, you're able to reduce the flows and reduce the size of the pumps needed for the projects. And just wondering if you have an idea of if it was how much of a reduction it was in terms of the pump size, if it was a couple percent or 10%, 20%, any more information on that?
Yep, sorry. I think I may have not communicated clearly. So we were just looking to provide the decreased flows from the stormwater management plan for the city that they had determined with just traditional detention. With this, and so that in effect would help the flood control system downstream, just basically implementing detention so that we can decrease the size of those pumps per the plan. But what we wanted to do was make it into something more. So providing the uplift with the wetland features and providing detention. The wetlands themselves, although yes, there's infiltration with those, we didn't specifically model how that decrease flows. We just use this design to also meet the design standards provided for us from that master plan, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
That actually leads us very well into the next question we have in the chat from Blake Aldridge. What is ecological uplift?
Okay, if anyone wants to chime in on this, I see ecological uplift as providing a native habitat into an area. Anything we can do to have something more than just traditional mowed grass areas for our stormwater detention. So in this case, we provided some more native hydrology with the wetlands, but also we provided the native vegetation species that can attract native animals and insects. So I don't know the exact definition, but providing more of a native uplift to the area.
You follow up on that question. Have you got a chance to do any type of monitoring afterwards to kind of look as there increased biodiversity? And on the same vein, have you done any water quality monitoring to see if there's a reduction as the water flows through it?
This is sort of an ongoing question mark in Iowa. This particular site, they have just finished grading. So right now, and doing the seeding. So we don't have a full growth cycle. But with a lot of our projects in Iowa, everyone has a question like, well, did you monitor it afterwards? And the answer site specifically is no, but we do have a lot of the universities looking at like these practices in general. So we have a general idea of, how it can benefit water quality, but we don't really have funding to monitor every site. And then definitely don't have funding to do like a biological survey of the area. But the natives do get established really well. We have different seed mixes specced across the state that are, for different types of hydrologic zones. So you can call out those seed mixes and also use a mix of live plants if you have that, and they do really well as long as you do certain measures to get the plants established, like planting at the appropriate window. Different types of matting can be used with the seeds, but just, I guess, the general knowledge of how to maintain that. The city, we had conversations with them on like what they need to do every year as far as like mowing schedules to make sure that the natives get established. And then also through the funding, that water quality initiative funding, you're required to provide a maintenance plan. So the city signs that maintenance plan, and that includes like how the natives are going to get established and how they're going to be maintained for, I want to say, the next 20 years.
Great. Feel free to raise your hand if you'd like to say a verbal question. I'll keep reading through here. Zoe Isaacson asks, do you get pushback from folks regarding mosquitoes?
I did not get any pushback on this specific project regarding mosquitoes, but we do sometimes get it on other projects. I don't know. We didn't on this project.
Good. Miranda Penn is asking, my apologies, I only caught half of the funding slide. What were the funding sources?
We had some funding from FEMA, and then also from IDALS, the Water Quality Initiative funding, and then the city also contributed.
And IDALS is Iowa?
Yeah, Iowa Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship, sorry.
No worries. Okay, Juliana Manott is asking, with properties being in the floodway, is there a program to do any buyouts of repeat flood properties, possibly turn them into storage?
Yes. This came through that stormwater management plan for the city. The two strategies they had were, let's provide some structural relief for flooding, i.e. levees, detention basins, but also here's our list of all the properties that are within the floodplain and experience recurring flooding. And the city is working with landowners to purchase those properties and turn them into green space. They are very good at keeping track of those properties and working with property owners for specific needs. Like there's one parcel in town that they want to purchase, but the landowner said, I don't want to sell it until my son graduates from high school. So they're coming back to that property owner in a couple years when their kids are all out of the house, and they keep track of it really well.
Good, thank you. Art is asking, can you provide a board breakdown, perhaps broad breakdown of construction cost? What is your opinion of cost benefit for this project?
I could probably have this memorized. I can look up costs as we are on here. If you give me a minute, I can find the construction costs. I think the cost benefit is more so related to how the city decided to improve the overall stormwater system throughout town to help with events like the 2008 flooding and just flooding in general. So I think it's worth it, but I think also they've done everything they can to, kind of prove that it's worth it with their targeted areas of town where they're providing structural relief for flooding.
All right. Mary is asking, I may have missed it, but what H&H model was used to design the basin?
We had a mix of models. So we had we used XP Swim for the overall system modeling to see how the weir would affect the downstream system, but then we also used HECRAS because we had to get a no-rise certification from the Iowa Department of Natural Resources for floodplain permitting since we were in the floodway and flood zone. I don't have exact construction costs, but it was about our estimate, and I think we came a little bit below estimate, was 2.6 million. And that's for everything.
Great. I apologize if I pronounced his name wrong. Sami Khalil is asking, what were the main drivers that led Cedar Rapids to shift from traditional detention-only approaches towards multi-benefit stormwater solutions?
I don't know if I can speak for the city, but the state of Iowa about 10 years ago pushed out the unified sizing criteria, and it's not required in every single city, but it gives you a good roadmap of how you can do more than just traditional stormwater management. And so, like for this project, we're not putting detention in because of a development. So we weren't trying to meet a specific standard that the city has for stormwater development. This was more just we're trying to reduce flows based on modeling that was done with the stormwater management study. I think the city has seen the benefit of like doing more than just traditional stormwater detention and they've seen the benefit with using natives. They have a lot of, residents that really like the look of natives when those are incorporated with the plans. But I can't speak to how they specifically decided that they like to do more than just the traditional detention.
Great. I see one more question in the chat. Once again, please raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question or put it in the chat. Regarding water quality, were plant species selected for bioremediation effects? Are there any pollution collection removal elements included in this design?
No, the plants were not selected for bioremediation. We tried to select plants that would do well in the different zones. So we had quite a few borings for the site to see what the groundwater levels were, and we knew kind of what zones of the wetland would stay wet. And so we just selected plants based on those different zones, but nothing for like toxins. I don't know, but I don't think that this particular watershed is prone to that, or that was needed. It's also bioremediation isn't a super common practice in Cedar Rapids. How does the wetland system improve water quality compared to a traditional basin from your experience? So traditional basins, those are designed just to fill with water, hold the water for typically 24 hours and slowly drain out. They're typically put either underground or in like a grassed area, or even I've seen them in like a concrete basin by a parking lot. Those are really just to hold water back temporarily and then let it go into the system untreated. The wetland system allows water that gets into the basin within the wetland areas to be infiltrated, to be treated by the native plants, and then back into the stormwater network. So really, the benefit is we're just treating the water with native plants, whereas traditional basins aren't doing that, and we're holding the water back longer with these wetlands.
Thanks, Kate. Jackie Vargas is asking, what was the square footage or acreage of the project area?
Oh gosh, I I do not memorize these things, but I can look it up quick if you give me a minute. If there's any more questions, I can take those.
I have a question for you. Can you give me a little bit of background, like who took the leadership and how was it set up to create an urban drainage seed mix for Iowa?
I also don't know the history on that either. I just know that we have it. And it's not always like the best mix. It's a mix that should work in like a wet and more of a dry area. But we also have our Iowa Stormwater Management Manual has even more suggested mixes. So like, I think there's 10 additional mixes based on different areas. So I'm not sure who started the two mixes in our statewide urban drainage specifications, but we've even expanded on that to providing even more seed mixes for different types of applications. I think it makes it easier to use native plants because you don't have to reinvent the wheel with everything. You have these set seed mixes that contractors are familiar with too. And I don't know how it came about, but it seems to work really well to have just set mixes that everyone can go to.
Roy, or if there's anybody else from Iowa on the call who might know a little more too. All right, I think it's a great idea, and I think it's one that other states around the Great Plains maybe could learn from. There may be more states that have that than I'm aware of, but I think it's a good deal. Um, Alina is asking, is Vinton Ditch an artificial channel?
So I have the answer to the previous
Oh.
question on size. It was about 5 acres. I don't know. So it was a stream at one point, but all of the water from the area comes from, I think, developed areas. I don't think that this was like a man-made creek, but it definitely was modified, its alignment, like it's been straightened. So somewhat, yes, artificial channel, but only because it had been straightened. It wasn't like created.
All right, last chance for questions. If we don't get any more coming in, thank you, Kate, so much for kicking us off on this uh, really interesting and I think innovative project, something that can be utilized as an example across the Great Plains, and we can learn from together as a community. Thank you to everybody for logging in and participating today. Thanks for the great flow of questions. It was a good thing Kate left a little bit more time than she planned to for the questions so we could get them all in. So that's awesome. Thank you so much, Kate. Really, really appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you, everybody.
Have a great day.